Looking good so far. Let's make sure. Huh. Well, one moment, folks. Fun times. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're now live. Okay, sorry, had to do the check as always. Yay for us. All right, so happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. I personally am sipping on some Pinot Noir, and I hope you are too. I hope your tanks are fabulous, your week's been great, and I'm so glad you're here to join us to chat. We have an extra special guest today, but before we jump to him, I had to let you know that Miss Holly's new business, Siren Song Seahorses, is sponsoring this episode. And the website will include her essential oil fragrances, some of which I just happen to have right here. And as she will tell us about in a minute, and eventually the website will contain, you will be able to purchase her seahorses too. So it's going to be really cool. It'll be opening this upcoming week, so watch for a post about that. And Holly, I just wanted to say thank you again and ask you a little bit more about the fragrances.
Thank you very much. And cheers. I'm going to have champagne tonight to celebrate the seahorses making it to you. I'm very glad. So, what I have on my website, for sale, having a grand opening next Wednesday. Let's see if you guys can see this. I created an essential oil fragrance and it's inspired by seahorses. And what's in it is locally harvested lavender oil, patchouli, cypress, and sweet orange. It's also got fluorite chips. That's a gem, and that's to help keep the oil blended, as well as be positive energy for those who believe in the power of crystals. So it's all organic essential oils in there. And I know you've tried it, Kelly. What did you think of it?
I really really like it. You guys know me too well. I'm not really the essential oil type, and I'm so glad that I did try it because it's like it made my skin soft. The scent stays. It's not like so strong like a perfume. I just really liked it. In fact, as you can folks can see, I got some for Christmas presents. So if you're on my nice list, you might just get one. And I believe Holly, the plan is that, and you'll see the post about this, folks, but the plan is to celebrate the grand opening and her working with Wine Wednesday. We'll be raffling off 3 over the next week, and we'll announce the winners on Wine Wednesday next week. So watch for that post also. But was there anything else you wanted to say, Holly? I'm sorry if I interrupted.
That's pretty much it. Also, I will have, I do raise seahorses.
Mm-hmm.
Those are available privately. You can contact me personally from my website, if anyone's interested, because I'll only have a few at a time. It'll be intermittent, and
Sure.
so I work that out with people on a personal basis. So
Fine.
anyone
Sorry.
interested can let me know. And other than that, I have the fragrances for sale now. Um, and I'll be adding other products as time goes by that it
And
will be available on my website.
And that's Siren Song Seahorses, folks. But I'll make sure you see that on the post. And the final thing I wanted to say is, or a question, final question for you, Holly, is when you do start selling the seahorses on the site, or even if they have to contact you, will you be shipping? And the reason I ask this, folks, is because she did an excellent, fabulous job. I received my seahorses a day ago. You'll be seeing lots more of them. Kelly did a newbie mistake and added too much bacteria, Lord help me. And so my tank's all cloudy, but you'll be seeing them very soon, and she did an excellent job. So will you be shipping, Holly?
Yes, I'll be doing shipping.
Good.
And people that want seahorses, they're going to have to pay for the shipping. It's not cheap. Most
Mm-hmm.
of us who have seahorses know this because I have to overnight them. So you'll have to pay shipping and then have, a private arrangement with me, because I don't have a lot available.
Mm-hmm.
But those who are interested, I have a Facebook page, Siren Song Seahorses,
Yep.
and you can contact me from there. And that's also linked to my shop. So I have a shop linked to Facebook as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I'm going to jump to our guest now. But thank you for sponsoring the episode, and thank you for sharing all this wonderful stuff. And we'll post about it soon. So, everybody, everybody, check out, watch for the posts. Jeez. All right. Let me
Here's
guess.
to the seahorses.
Yes. Here's to the. Absolutely.
My champagne. Thank you.
Absolutely. Drink the champagne as we go. And the ladies will be back to ask questions at the end, but now I get to jump into my questions interview with Sir Richard Ross. If you don't know him from Reef Beef, from Macnas, from all of the work that he's done with cephalopods and seahorses and everything else, then, well, you've been under a rock for a while. But welcome, Richard. We're so glad that you've come to chat with us.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for those very nice words. I'm blushing already.
Oh, of course. Well, I go way back, and every interview I start at the very beginning. So tell me I know that you've done more than just tanks, obviously, but what got you interested in saltwater in the very first place?
In saltwater?
Yeah.
Let's see. Saltwater. I guess my first job was at a tropical fish store, and this was like in the 80s, I guess, and that's when we didn't really know how to do saltwater very well, and being at a fish store, we were working on it and doing it and selling it. So I started then. So that's what got me into it. It was just the next part of working in an aquarium store.
Absolutely.
And I think when I was 16 or so, I was doing maintenance for people with saltwater tanks. And a lot of that was, bringing dried corals in and out, swapping them out. But there were some of them that were doing live corals. And it was pretty fun because I got to go to the wholesalers or to the store and pick out stuff for them and bring it and set it up in their tanks.
Nice.
So that's how that started. And I guess by the time I was 16, I had probably 30 tanks in my bedroom and had been doing saltwater there as well. So that's how all that got going. I did reptiles as well, but saltwater semed to stick a whole lot.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I mean, it sounds like you've just done stuff in every area. When did you jump into the sciencing of it, to put it very bluntly?
So I went to college originally to go in for marine biology, but in the first chemistry class I took, I realized I hated it because it was going to be 4 years of just doing stuff other people had done in giant classes with 400 other people, and that didn't seem interesting to me. So I was part of some of the aquaculture clubs on campus. So I kept doing stuff, but decided that academically it wasn't where I wanted to go. And so I went into philosophy because that was interesting to me. I kind of jump to things that interest me. And I usually have about 7 to 10 years before it gets harder to get better. So
Right.
I kind of don't care about the last 90% of anything. I mean, I'm sorry, the last 10% of anything, because I think to get to 91%, you have to do the same amount of work that you did to get to 90%. And each one of those last 10 percentage points, you have to do again all the amount of work that's come above, and I mean before, and that those incremental steps up just seemed like a lot of work without enough payoff for me. Other people go differently, but it doesn't work out for me. I tend to just lose interest when it becomes work for work's sake rather than work for joy's sake, if that makes any kind of sense. I hear that about using my scale at about 96, 97, 98%, it starts to become interesting again. But man, those 5 or 6% in between just seem like teeth pulling to me. So I did philosophy, and then I was a juggler for about 15 years. That was my job. Ended up doing a lot of trade shows and things like that. Started with comedy clubs and ended up being a corporate shill. And then we were going to have a baby. Well, I wasn't going to have a baby. My wife was going to have a baby. I was going to stand there. And we had to decide who was going to stay at home with the kid because we thought that was important. And the conversation went pretty much like, who's got the better insurance, the juggler or the financial planner? I guess the juggler will be staying home with the baby. And,
Juggling the baby now. Go ahead.
Juggling the baby. Absolutely. There's a video of that somewhere. then during that time, I got back into keeping tanks. I had taken a break from it. I did reptiles a little bit, but really not so much. And got back in with a vengeance. And that's when, when my daughter was 4 or 5, I think that's when I closed the life cycle on the dwarf cuttlefish, the Sepia bandensis, in this room, but it looked different than this at the time. And then when my kids started preschool, my wife said I should talk to adults. So I started volunteering at the California Academy of Sciences, and that miraculously turned into a job. I wasn't looking for a job, and that's how I got into that. And I attacked that and, started doing more research and things like that, and did all the stuff with all the animals that you mentioned in the intro. And then started spawning corals. And then the 10-year mark kind of came around, and it was kind of time to move on. So now I'm doing independent research at home, which gives me a lot more flexibility, and we'll see how that goes.
Awesome. And you just made me realize that I can't believe coral spawning was not on my on my notes here. I'm like bashing my head. Somebody remind me. Don't let us let him go until he tells us about that too. Okay. Well, since and I don't want to keep you all night, so I'm gonna try to dive in here. This is a seahorse channel. Of course, we're interested in the pygmies, but first I wanted to ask, you're currently in your secret home lab, right? Is that the title?
I am.
Okay. And you were able to complete the life cycle in that lab?
Yeah.
Oh,
of the
that's so cool.
cuttlefish?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a few things in here. But the cuttles were the first ones that the lab actually became a lab.
Yeah.
Before that, it was just I was keeping a tank in the living room, actually. There's a 150-gallon display in the living room, and then there's these 4 tanks, and they're all plumbed together underneath the house. And this is where I do experimental stuff, and the tank in the living room is to look pretty.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just in case anybody doesn't know what it means when you say completed the life cycle, can you give us a brief on that real quick?
Yeah, it means that you took some animals from eggs and grew them up and had them lay eggs, and then those hatched out, and you were able to have them make eggs again. So actually, I think that's twice. I think if you go from egg to egg, you've completed the life cycle, and then you get into things where they call it F2, where you've got the second generation.
Yeah.
Which I did as well with those animals, because that was fun at the time.
I was gonna say egg to egg is even better, right? I mean, hey, come on.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump into the pygmies. Okay. What? First off, what made you decide to even do this project?
Well, I was working with Matt Wandell, and it was really Matt Wandell's brainchild. Matt and I worked together for about 6-7 years, and we mostly share the same brain, which is really nice. We differ on methodology in a couple of small places, but most of the time we really agree. So it was really a fruitful partnership, I think. I really enjoyed it. Matt got it into his head that he wanted to keep Muricella alive, which is the Gorgonian, the sea fan that that the pygmy seahorses live on. And in 2011, we did an expedition to the Philippines with work, where we got to see the Muricella and we got to see the pygmy seahorses in the wild. Oh. And we knew that it was likely we were going to keep sending back people to the Philippines for a few years to the same area. And so we were able to, or Matt was able to convince the managers there at the time that we should do this. So we brought a piece of Muricella back, and he kept it alive for a year and growing. And then we were going to collect some of the pygmies, which Matt did, sent them home. And then he and I were really on the team that kind of kept them alive. He made all the choices. I mean, we both were in things, but he was the decider, and I was the one who captured everything on video. So it was a really good partnership, because it was really defined who was kind of doing what. And
you still share the same brain. Got it. And yeah. So, right, and I read about this I back then, and is it Muricella? Is that how you say it?
Muricella.
Okay. Yeah. You guys kept that for like 3 years before you even got the pygmies, right?
I think that was, I'd have to check. I think it was a year.
Oh, okay.
We collected it the 1 year, and then we went back and collected some more of it with the seahorses the next year.
Gotcha. So how hard was it to keep the Muricella alive?
It was a pain. It needs a lot of flow.
Gotcha.
Something like 50 centimeters a second is one of the ways you talk about flow. Everybody talks about they go on a dive site and they go, but there wasn't much flow, and it's they have to remember that you're not there when there's a lot of flow.
Right.
When you get on a dive boat and they're taking you somewhere and you say, I want to go to this site, and they say we can't, it's because you literally can't go there at the time because there's too much current. So they need a lot of flow. It's got to be laminar. It's kind of going one direction. These Muricella end up in a place where flow goes in one direction for most of the day and the other direction the rest of the day. And then a lot of food. It's a non-photosynthetic gorgonian. So a lot of food.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then keeping up with that, the maintenance of keeping well, I'm sure you were using a huge tank, but still, yeah.
No, we were actually keeping a small tank. But,
really?
A small-ish tank for this. Big tanks are really interesting. But you reach a point where to get the animal you're trying to feed food, if a tank is too big, you have to put in so much food. So it's really easier to flood feed a smaller system than it is a larger system.
That makes perfect sense. Dan always recommends, like for dwarf seahorses, to keep a small tank with a huge sump.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I did those, I kept them in a cube, and then they actually was in here. I just in literally a cube system, and let that water drip down and feed the whole rest of the system.
Oh yeah, I love it. That's very, very cool. Okay, so yeah, and another thing, just top of my head here, that's really interesting because you're talking about these tiny, tiny seahorses living in a gorgonian, and they're used to this heavy flow. How do those little suckers hold on? I mean,
the gorgonians are like a meter or 2 meters around. They're huge.
Okay.
And the seahorses are, the Barjabanti, they're seahorses that are like the size of my pinky nail. They're really, really small.
Right.
And they hold on just like any other seahorse.
Right.
So, yeah.
Those tails are not going to give up.
No, they're not. And also, when the flow is coming, they often go on the side opposite of the flow. So the gorgonian is like a windbreak, as it were.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Which enables them to move around and hunt.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Well, and that's the other thing is forgive me, but did you actually complete the life cycle with them?
We got some of the babies to 126 days. I think was how far we got them. Feeding the seahorses is insane. We had the idea that they probably are picking food off the gorgonian, not out of the water column. So, and that came from like observing as best we could the gorgonian in the wild and talking to gorgonian specialists and knowing from being in these dive sites that the water is filled with marine snow and plankton and goo all the time. It's not clean water at all. Everyone in their tanks wants the tank's water to be as clean as possible because it looks pretty, but there's kind of food particulate matter in the water all the time at these dive sites. So what we ended up doing, we threw the kitchen sink at them to keep them alive, wow. Fed them everything we could think of. And we were able to actually see them picking at the gorgonian. And so the idea was that we would flood feed and assume that they were getting food when they were picking. We have some video of that of them actually feeding. So that was pretty exciting to confirm that. But the really exciting thing was the gorgonian, the sea fan, comes in two different colors. There's a pink or purple one, and an orange one.
Right.
And the seahorses are in either color. You find them in both colors, pink or orange. And we collected ones from an orange gorgonian. I'm making sure I've got this right. And then we needed more gorgonian, and the only stuff we were able to get through the trade was the pink stuff.
Uh-oh.
So, and they took to it just fine, not a problem. It's a camouflage thing, and it looked like that they don't change color. One time they get to, when they settle, they pick a color. And our big question was, now what are they going to do? What color are they going to be?
Yeah.
Are they going to be orange or are they going to be pink? What's the deal? And the first batch we had, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Sorry. It's okay. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
The it took about 25 days for them to settle.
Mhm.
There was a bunch of cues we kind of figured out about that, because we had 3 batches of babies, which is insane.
Yeah.
And when they settled, they went pink. They became the color of the sea fan. So that was kind of the exciting conclusion, or not really a conclusion. That was the exciting observation. We suspected that they probably at settlement decided what color, because they go into the water column when they're released from the father.
Mhm.
They go off and they're larval for however long they're larval, and then they find the sea fan again 80 feet down in the ocean.
That's
And
insane.
we figured that they probably are taking whichever one they find, pink or orange, and then change. And then when they settle, their color then matches it, and that's what happened. They went pink, and that was really within like 24 hours.
How cool.
When they were larval, they were kind of like this mottled brownish color, and within 24 hours, they matched the sea fan exactly.
That is so cool. But now the adults would not do that.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
No,
Okay.
they did not change color. They
Gotcha.
stayed orange on the pink, which made some really nice photographs.
Cheryl, did you have a question?
Well, no, I was just remember reading back a while back that once they select a particular color, if you move them to a different gorg, the yellow variety, they will not change. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah, they don't.
But it's very good. See, these kind of experiments that you're doing, and it's just so cool because we're actually learning, about how these behave in the wild. That's just, oh my gosh, it's so awesome to me.
And we could see how much flow they could take. We used a lot of air to make flow in small spaces,
Mhm.
and we had those on different kinds of timers. It was a really exciting project.
And-
Feeding them everything we could think of. It was great. It was really fun.
Yes, it really is cool. And now do they actually let go of the Gorgonian to court, mate?
Yes, they do. They
Okay.
do. I've got some footage of them coming up and coming together, mating, and then getting back down to the Gorgonian.
Wow.
And we would assume that they do that at slack tide
Gotcha.
when there's not a lot of current.
That makes sense. I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing though that they're timing all this based on their surroundings. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. When we got them back, we got a pair back. That's all we collected was a pair. And how we collected them was we cut the Gorgonian with the 2 ponies on it. So we had a small piece with the 2 ponies, and we shipped that back. And actually how that worked was Matt was in the Philippines at the time. I'd been there the week before, and then I was home. And so he shipped those back, and we received them, 36 hours after collection.
Wow.
And we did the same thing with the Ghost Pipefish. It's these really sensitive animals. You don't want them. You gotta baby them
Mhm.
instead of sending them through the chain of custody, which can be really hard on animals. And then when about a week later, we were like, I think Nick Yim saw it and thought, oh, I think this male is pregnant. I think he's carrying.
How
So
cool.
we started watching, and yeah, it was. And we figured he was going to release early in the morning. So Matt and I were getting in at like 5 in the morning. And I would set up the camera, and we would sit there and watch. And then it happened, and we lost our minds.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
Crazy. And
So-
then now we got to figure out, can we keep these alive?
Right.
Because that's, some other people would go like, oh, you can't. But, Matt and I were like, oh, we're going to try.
Absolutely.
And, so we just went for it.
Yeah, you're talking if the adults are the size of a pinky nail, my goodness, the fry. Oh my god.
Yeah,
How
like 2 millimeters.
Oh my gosh.
When did you find out that when did they actually deliver? I'm curious because depending on the species, I have seen seahorses. Some deliver at midnight and definitely before dawn. Many of the ones in the Gulf Coast area, Arachnus, Reed Island, they will typically give birth at first light when you first bring
Yeah.
on the lights.
These
But
guys were at first light.
First light.
At first light. In fact, we were, and of course we only have an N of 1. We've only done this once.
right.
So we can't really make strong conclusions about it. We could just tell you our observations. But we were so paranoid, I was setting up the cameras in the dark, essentially, because I didn't want to throw them off, because we figured if they're going to go at first light, they're really going to go at first light.
Mhm.
And it was, within 10 minutes of the lights starting to come on that they would go.
Wow.
And gestation seemed to be about 2 weeks. So that was really exciting. The first, he let go. And then I was able to film the mating like right after.
So cool.
And then 2 weeks later, we had another batch. And then 2 weeks after that, we had another batch.
Oh, so they're like more rabbity than the larger species.
Yeah. Well, they seem to be. If they do that in the wild or not, it's a whole other question. Again, because that's our observation. Is there any stress? Is there, and then we lost the adults. Well, we knew where they were. They just weren't alive anymore. I don't know why I'm using a euphemism of lost. They died, and we don't know if that was a nutritional thing. Because we only get them to 126 days, we tend to think it might be a nutritional thing, that the adults eat something else than what the babies eat. And these gorgonians are this crazy ecosystem with millions of different animals living on there. So it could be anything going on in there. We just don't know.
Right. And
you don't know what their actual food consumption was, or the species.
No, especially not adults in the wild. It's just really, I don't even know how you would begin to study that.
Right.
I mean, you could go every day and look, but what you really need is you need to watch them throughout the entire day, and that's just not possible.
Well, then that's true even with the fry too, to try to grow them out.
Well, then they go into the water column, and do they go up? Do they stay down? How far do they travel?
Sure. Insane.
Do they change mates sometimes in the wild after one breeding? Many species do, some individuals don't.
Are they monogamous?
One of the ideas that they don't, these guys, but I'm not sure where I'm pulling that from. I'm trying to remember.
We won't quote you on it, but that's and
be out of,
sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but so the 126 days. Do we have? Do you know if we have discovered their lifespan? Just out of curiosity, like how long are they supposed to live?
Not sure. If I'm remembering correctly, 6 months to a year. I want to say 6 to 8 months. They seem to be short-lived. And I would. There's a guy, Richard Smith, who's done a lot of observations.
He's great.
He would be the guy I would talk to about that. I don't know if it's confirmed, because I don't know if people have gone every day to the same sea fan for a year to watch to see what happens, which is what you'd need to do. I know that I think that's what they did with Denise. They went and looked every day.
Well, I'm gonna have to try to get Richard on the show. You got guys. This Richard is the cephalopod dude, and we're like, no, go back and talk to us about seahorses. Come on. Sorry, just a couple more about the pygmies.
No, I don't like being. I'm not the. It's funny.
Oh, okay.
To be the cephalopod dude. When it's like I'm really a coral dude.
Oh, you're right. You're a coral dude now. Sorry.
I'm just a dude who likes all these animals and seems to have a blue thumb to be able to keep them. So. And
you always take the next step and, really investigate and figure things out. So you're right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called you any type of dude. My bad.
That's okay. It's totally okay.
So a couple more. Why did you only, I think you kind of said it, but was it just a requirement that you could only get one pair, or was there restrictions?
Well, those animals are important for the dive masters in the area.
Got it.
So we don't want to go through and strip all the animals from an area. And they're becoming harder to find because the gorgonian keeps getting harvested as black coral, which it isn't, which is terrible and awful. So their habitat is shrinking. And they're I was working for fundamentally a public aquarium, not a research aquarium. So the question is, how much resources are you going to put into an animal that's going to be terrible to be on display?
Right.
The reality about, even though we came up with ways to do it, to put them on display, the reality is a video of pygmy seahorses is better than a display.
Right.
I mean, because the display is just like, yes, they're there. Where? There, I promise you they're there. So it just, we couldn't get support to do it more just cause.
Well, it's really cool
Yeah.
that you did do it, and then we got to learn from it. But I'm totally with you. Like when people ask me about seahorses, I'm always like, really seriously, go with the larger species, because the dwarf seahorses, you're barely gonna see them. They require live foods. It's so much more difficult. Come on. So I'm totally with you. I have two last questions. The first one is, you kind of said you did everything you could to duplicate their natural environment. Did that include, like, for instance, abdominalis, we say you got to have a chiller. What temperature and what equipment did you use to try to duplicate the?
So these guys are reef temperatures. So
Oh.
when we were keeping them, all we had to do was, make sure they stayed warm. So that was easy. We didn't want to put pumps in with them to make flow. So like I said, we used a lot of air,
Yeah.
because air really can churn things up, but there's no chance that they're going to get stuck into the propeller of the air pump, because it's an air bubble.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. Not much light, because we figured they didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think what else I can tell you about them. It
You
was
said
really,
they found them at about 80 feet.
yeah, the Muricella is 80 feet or deeper.
I would have expected them to be in a shallower area than that. That's catching me by surprise.
Yeah, no, they're deep ones. They one of the reasons they became so exciting to photograph for divers was because it was not easy.
No.
You had to go down deep, and then you had to be able to find them, and then take a picture of them. So you got like 8-10 minutes at that depth on regular scuba gear.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were super cool. There was something else that came to mind that I thought you should know. Oh, we did a paper. So there's a paper on them. I forget what it's called, but I can give you the link. The lifestyles of the rich and seahorse. No, something about the pygmy seahorse. So we were able to get a lot of good measurements. Post-mortem, we were able to get a lot of good photographs, a lot of good video. So all of that's available online. You can find that paper.
Absolutely. I'll find it and I'll try to. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I was just going to say, I've read some papers that were published
Yep.
on it.
Yeah.
Well, I will.
That's all.
Sorry.
You can find it on my website, therichrross.com.
Okay.
That's actually under construction right now. So you might want to, you may need to go to the old website, which is packedhead.net. And it's all there on either one of those sites. They should both be there.
Yes, and we got to talk about the skeptical reefkeeping that's on packedhead.net. But last question about the pygmies. And because Matt Peterson, I remember, did an excellent article about just your whole project with them. But the focus of his article was they're not going to be in the hobby. And you just discussed kind of why they shouldn't be. So your opinion is leave them alone, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't have a problem with somebody with a bunch of funding and time and expertise getting a pair or two legally and trying to breed them more. But they're just, you go with Zostre. It's just so much easier to do than these guys, and you have to keep the Gorgonian alive. It's just a huge undertaking that should not be taken lightly at all. And one of the nice things about, I think, our work with them was it became very clear how much work was needed to keep them. And so I don't know if I've seen these guys available or offered in the trade in a long time. You used to see them from time to time anyway, and people would be, I'd just give them a try. It's like, no, don't.
Really? Ooh.
So no, they're not they're not for almost anybody. I wouldn't do them here. They're just too much work.
Sure.
I mean, unless I had a lot of funding. It's it's kind of the same with the Ghost Pipefish.
Yes.
You just gotta, they're a bunch of work, and you gotta feed them what they need to eat. You can't screw around with that. They're not an animal we understand. very well. They really need their live food, and they need a lot of it. And raising the fry is a whole crazy thing. They spit out. It looks like these guys don't have a pouch. They have modified pelvic fins,
Mhm.
and the female has a bunch of fertilized eggs at different stages of development, and every day she kind of pushes a few out. It's not like
Oh, wow.
she lets them all go at all at once. So you got to be on top of that, and then you got to raise those. And those things are so fragile that through the chain of custody, they just come in just trashed and starved, and then they don't really recover. So when we collected those, it was the same thing. Collected them, shipped them, got them home, within 48 hours. If you can do that, they seem to do really well. But again, those are also charismatic fauna for the dive masters of the area.
Right.
So if you take them, you're taking them from, a bunch
People
of
that need them.
people. Yeah. But then it's weird. It's like, well, so then rich people who get to go to these places, only they should see it. It's a whole infinite regress of crazy who has priority on these animals.
Sure, and I agree. I agree totally with everything you said. I just got done with interviewing and doing a video with Deborah Corker, who keeps sea dragons in her home.
Yeah,
Successfully. Great job. She also, I don't want to spoil the video, guys, but she also has literally two, I don't want to call them barns, what do you call them? Two housing units outside of her house that plumbing goes to. I mean, it's insane. And so, I mean, I think it's great. Like 20 years ago, people said you couldn't keep seahorses in aquariums, and now we all know you can. But so it's good that the people that can do, I guess. Like I'm so glad you worked with the pygmies just to tell us, hey, probably not for the hobby. But it does require somebody who can do it, and I understand your weight. Is that fair? But hey, I'm just gonna say, glad you did the research.
me too. I think funded responsible keeping for research is great.
Mm-hmm.
I think getting an animal on a lark, one of these kinds of animals, it's not responsible. And you got to feed them, and you got to be a nut. You got to be a real nut to try to keep almost any of the animals I've kept. They just are really a lot of work, and feeding them is its own expense.
Feeding is the number one thing, and I would not call it a nut. I'd call it someone in love with the animals, but
Okay.
we'll go with nut.
Nicer.
And really quick about the ghost pipefish before we jump ahead, because I tried, not on purpose.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lark. I didn't be like, oh, I'm going to try this. But I was in a situation where someone had them, they were selling them, and a bunch of people came to me and said, you should get them so no one else does. At least you have a fighting chance, kind of thing. And I failed miserably, just to let you know. In fact, your talk about how they're transported, when I literally got them, and it was somebody local, I don't know how he got them, but so it wasn't like they had to go through the mail to me, at least. I know originally they did, but okay, I'm rambling. Bottom line is the one of them, the fin was torn just slightly, and he couldn't swim. It was over with.
Yeah.
So they're like
they come in broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating because our first inclination is to try to rescue them.
Yeah.
So what I try to do now, if somebody has an animal that should not be going through the hobby,
Yes.
I won't pay for it.
That's
I'll say
smart.
I'll be happy to take it off your hands, and pay for shipping for it if it needs to be shipped. But I can't, in good conscience, give you any money for it. There has to be some place along the chain where somebody doesn't get paid.
Yep.
And hopefully that'll start going back up the chain, and people will stop collecting them, which I haven't seen Ghost Pipefish in the hobby for a long time either.
Right.
I think it's nice in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, a lot of the animals that we used to see that we knew shouldn't be around kind of are collected less. Even like, butterflies that eat corals, you don't see them quite as much in the States as you used to. And cephalopods you don't see as much, which is good. So there's a lot of good. I think there's a lot of good as the hobby matures. I think we got a way to go as the industry and the hobby has to become sustainable.
Absolutely.
and responsible in order to survive on a global stage where you can't hide anymore and go, oh yeah, well they just die sometimes. Like that's not a good enough excuse anymore.
Absolutely. And so, would your overall opinion be, just as I know you're way more than a hobbyist, but just on the hobby level, that mainly the creature, I don't want to say creatures, I can't even think of the right word, but like the ghost pipes and like the pygmies and all that, and you keep saying feeding, so is it mainly the animals that can't be trained under frozen that we should steer clear from, or
The animals that are fragile, that we don't understand what they
we
need to
don't understand?
survive,
Okay.
and what they need to eat.
Yeah.
I used to go through this with cuttlefish all the time, which are not fish. I'm sorry, they're cuttles. I like to call them cuttles. They people even now they say, oh, I've got some babies, I'm going to feed it brine shrimp, and it's like, we know that they don't do well on brine shrimp. Even anecdotally, we don't need to run that anecdotal experiment anymore. We know they do not do good. If you are going to try to feed them brine shrimp, you should not get these animals. You're not prepared. You are not going to be the one who's magically going to find that this time they're going to survive their entire lifespan on brine shrimp. We've seen it too many times. So I think, I don't want to say hobbyists, it gets so weird. There's a lot of hobbyists that are nuts. And what was the word you used?
Or lovers.
In love. There's a lot of hobbyists who are really, really skilled and really, really dedicated and have means to be able to support that love and those animals. And I think those are people, if we could figure out a way to get them responsible access to some of these animals, that we should. Yeah. I mean, they're going to figure out how to spawn them. They're going to figure out how to keep them, and
then captive breed them, right?
Yeah. It just can't be some random, I saw them in a pet store and got them. Yeah. So some sort of certification, which I think is the way the hobby's got to go anyway, especially on the side of the industry and the trade. I think there should be some kinds of certification. And I if you push me, and you don't have to push me hard, I'm even in favor of some kind of certification for keeping a tank. I mean,
right.
There's no reason why anybody in their first 6 months to a year should be getting any wild animals at this point.
I actually think I agree. I actually agree a lot, because and there's so much bad information out there these days, and yeah. Did you
It
go ahead,
happens
Cheryl.
all the time. They go out, they go to the local fish store, they buy a seahorse that's wild caught, it's not eating frozen. They don't know, oh, well, I can go get some ghost shrimp at the Gulf, or I can go get some brine shrimp. That is not going to be their diet. And I've seen so many wild caught seahorses that flat out will not take brine shrimp.
Yeah.
Right.
They will not take it.
Yeah, brine shrimp's not a great food.
No. And the thing is, you have to understand, it's the same thing with raising fry from a lot of these species. You have to know how to culture different types of copepods that are different sizes, and and when you've got several hundred bouncing baby seahorses, that's a lot of copepods each day. It's not something that you're going to do in one 5-gallon jar.
Right.
And this is where most people fail.
Absolutely. The rule of thumb that I saw, and that's not going to work for 200 to 500 baby seahorses, but you need about 4 times the tank space dedicated to growing food than for the animals you want to keep.
That makes sense.
It's work. When I was doing cuddles before some other stuff had figured out, we know they took mysids. We know they ate mysids. So I would either buy mysids, or I would go to a brackish lake here 5 times a month, and at dusk, and collect mysis.
Wow.
You've got to be a nut to do that. That's a nutty thing to do.
Hey, I'm a nut.
Well, and and then of course with live feeds, I've always sucked at live feeds, because you gotta keep them clean. You gotta keep them, really working, and then you gotta have what they eat. And no, I'm good.
That's one of the reasons I don't want to work with octopuses that have a larval period anymore.
Right. Oh, really? Okay.
Because they're, I think they're probably going to eat like hermit crab zoa, but you need different sizes at different ages, you know, and they grow so fast. But I don't have the funding or the wherewithal to become an expert at breeding hermit crabs. So I
Right.
I don't love them.
Right. I hear you.
Uh,
Wait, before we jump, because I know we're going to jump into cuddle, and then we're getting to coral and reef beef,
Sure.
real quick. But with the ghost pipefish, I just know Dan wanted me to ask that specifically because he was, you know, really interested in if the project ever happened. He talked to you at MBI, but so
Yeah.
basically, you just couldn't get them, right? Is that?
Yeah. It was the same thing. It was like they're an okay display animal. You know, they're not a great display animal for most of the public. They're
Right.
cool. And so the question becomes, how much resources does a public aquarium want to put into keeping those animals and collecting those animals? Right. It was not cheap to get them, right?
Sure.
4 biologists going over to make, you know, a field station that's got to be put together and then shipping all these animals. So I think ghost pipes, I don't know if I want to say that out loud. I think if there was a way to get them responsibly, which I think is going to get them yourself, I think the chain of custody simply isn't made for this. It is not made for delicate animals like that. I think you know, there's 20 people that all of us know that would be good candidates to keep these animals.
Sure.
Yeah, but we stopped. We collected them twice, and the second time was a bit of a disaster from shipping delays.
Ooh.
And we just couldn't get excitement to do it again. Although we were very excited to do it again, and knew if we had a second chance that we could probably nail it.
Of course.
But that didn't happen.
So, have you? One thing I did want to make sure I at least mentioned, you guys. Richard speaks almost every year at MACNA, and his talks are excellent. Haven't you actually talked about the chain of command and responsible? We'll get into the skeptical in a minute, but responsible reef keeping and the chain of command and all that.
Yeah. When I guess in 2005, I was consulting on a fish collecting and coral growing station in Tonga, and got a real eye-opening view into the chain of custody. And so I have given talks on the chain of custody, and then getting to know other people involved and knowing what's involved, and then going to the Philippines and seeing it firsthand. And the chain of custody is, you know, you got to think, if you're paying $30 for a fish, you know, it's not necessarily being treated well all the way through the chain.
Right.
There's not a lot of money behind keeping that animal healthy. It's a volume business, which is bizarre that animals are a volume business. So they want to save money on freight, which means they want to put them in as little water as possible and pack as many into a box as, you know, and that's not really all the success that I've had or been involved with these animals has been, you know, collecting them very carefully, collecting them to order, not like a supermarket, shipping them very expensively with a lot of water and a lot of oxygen and a lot of effort into keeping them at the right temperature and shipping them as quickly as possible. And I think that's, you know, if we want that, we got to be willing to pay for it. Sure. And the hobby has shown that the hobby doesn't want to pay for that.
Right. Sadly.
Well, it's like I was asking, who was it? It was Ocean Reef Australia, one of the speakers, about hippocampus zebra. Well, they're a deep water seahorse. And what he was describing is the only way you're going to be able to get them to survive, most likely, is to put them in a hyperbaric chamber, bring them up slowly, and gradually acclimate them to a different pressure. Either that or have a hyperbaric chamber for them. And that is pretty much cost prohibitive at this point in time.
Well, and the folks who got the zebras they were successful. I don't know if they failed at this point, but they were successful for a while. But it shouldn't have been the highest bidder that got them. But go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
talking about Matt Wandell,
Yeah.
you should probably just have him, not me. He invented a hyperbaric chamber, a portable hyperbaric chamber to use while diving.
Oh, wow.
And there's a paper on that too. You can look that one up. And you bring it up, and it's basically a filter housing that's modified. And then you use pressure pumps, and you can feed into it, and they can stay in there while you lessen the pressure and bring them up to the surface. So those aren't super inexpensive,
Right.
but they also need a skilled operator to run them. It's not so all of these different things come into play with keeping the animals alive. Well, it's a bunch of work and a bunch of knowledge, and we just don't really have the funding to get that done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off, Cheryl, but we've got like 2 more things, and we've already kept Rich almost an hour. Okay, so my only last question about all of this, we're pretending like we're on Reef Beef before we talk about Reef Beef, which we will in a moment. But my question is, who would police the police? And guys, we're not going crazy political here, but I'm just saying, if like I know there have been certain, not corporations, communities, that's not the word either, but there have been entities that have been, you get certified. I can't remember, it was at IMAX? I can't remember the name
The
now.
MAC.
Yeah,
Marine
that's
Aquarium
it.
Council.
That's it. So, and whatever happened to that? Do you know?
It imploded and didn't get as much support as it could have.
Yeah.
The loudest detractors of the MAC say that they were, just money grubbing.
Oh,
And there may have been some of that. I was not privy to it exactly.
sure.
But my feeling of it is that their heart was in the right place and that they didn't get a lot of support. And the fact is, any NGO, any nonprofit organization still needs a bunch of money to work. So, they do need money. If there was something nefarious, okay, great. Let's stop that, but not throw out the entire organization.
Right.
So I think we need something else like that. Again, I think we need industry and trade wide buy-in. And I think at some point, a lot of the industry and trade gets some certain amount of the industry and trade works in the shadows. That's always how wildlife imports and exports has been. Those shadows are getting smaller. And I think they're going to start to see that actually shining the light on everything is one of the only things that's going to keep these businesses going long term. There's just not many places, even the places that do it well get screwed now, right? So Hawaii is kind of like the best, most documented, well-managed marine aquarium fishery in the world. And because of emotional argumentation, they're in trouble all the time. And some of it's been shut down. So I think we need an organization that's got widespread buy-in from the trade and the hobby. And I don't think the hobby is the place to deal with it.
Right.
People in the hobby just want to enjoy their hobby. They don't want to fight legal battles. It's like recycling. The companies that are making these plastic bottles are the ones who should be dealing with the recycling, not me, the end consumer. I'm only buying it because it's available. I don't want to deal with some political bomb about, a drink I drank. I just want the drink. Put it in glass. I'll buy it in glass. I don't really care. It's the same thing. It's not the end consumer's fault. We're too big for that to be a thing in my experience. It's much more efficient if the trade itself becomes sustainable and responsible and certified.
Yep.
So I think that's what we need.
Well, I agree. I don't want it to be somebody with a lot of money doing it, and I don't want a not-for-profit because of what you just said. So we're like, but I agree. I just want to add too that hobbyists, you're right, and I've heard you talk about this before about it's not really on the hobby, it's more on the industry, and I agree with you. But as hobbyists, we do need to be willing to pay more for quality and for sustainable industry. If I could talk, go ahead. Sorry.
100%. And unfortunately, the number of people who are going to be educated enough to be able to know that they should pay more for a quality animal and know how to find a quality animal is going to be a diminishingly small percentage of the population of the hobby. that's just how the hobby is. The first year, nobody knows anything. They go to Petco or their local fish store or whatever, and they just buy whatever's there. Why would they know anything else? There's no certification or anything for them to do that. I guess the only thing I'd want to add on the whole subject is that I think it behooves the hobby and the trade in the industry. I'm going to say it a different way. It's important that the trade in the industry get ahead of this and start making some choices, even if they don't like the choices, because eventually government is going to start making the choices for them and for us. And government does not give a shit about being able to keep your animals in your living room. It's to keep your exotic luxury animal in your living room is really just not something that I think they're going to pay a lot of attention to. And we've seen it with other countries that have passed laws. They go, wait, let's just end this. This is just a nightmare. Let's just stop. And with the way the world is going in general, climatically, it's going to be harder and harder to keep those lines open if you can show that they're not sustainable or responsible.
Absolutely.
That's going to happen more.
Yeah, it's like what's going on with Hawaii right now, and everybody's crying about, oh, we can't get Hawaiian tangs. Well, have you considered breeding them in captivity for the pet trade, if that's what you're going to do, or dragonets, things like this?
Well, the thing in Hawaii is, go ahead, Richard. Sorry.
Yeah, and the truth is, the hobby at large does not care if Hawaii fishes go away.
Right.
There are plenty of other fishes to buy. It's not. It's the 20. I'm pulling a number out of my butt. I did some back of the napkin calculation in an article once about this, but it's 25% of the hobby that knows and cares about all this stuff. Everybody else doesn't. Yeah. So, most people go to the fish store and they buy what's there. It's not collect to order, it's supermarket. And they don't know any different. So if there's no yellow tangs there, they don't know that they could have yellow tangs.
Yeah. And it's sad. It's sad though that with Hawaii being, as you said, you've already said this, but with Hawaii being such as one of the most sustainable fisheries, that they're the ones being shut down. That's just insane. And that's hey guys, let's really drive the point home. That's why everybody needs to start sharing and telling people to come to Wine Wednesday, because we tell you straight. Hey, speaking of shout outs, I know we're jumping. I still want to ask about the cuttlefish, and I have some important questions about octopi. Is octopi a word, or is it octopuses, or how do you say it?
Octopuses is more proper, but octopi is acceptable.
Okay, thank you. But before we go there, one of my favorite things that Rich does is reef beef. This podcast is informative, but it's funny, and it's just so great. So, Richard, why did you? Well, what got you into this podcast? How did that happen?
I was interested in doing a podcast for a long time, but couldn't think of anything that made sense or that would be a bunch of work that I didn't want to do.
Right.
And then my friend Ben Johnson, who lives in Texas, who's a maintenance guy, he's really great. We're friends, and I went, hey, why don't we do a podcast where it's like, Ben and I talking in the bar on Friday night at Macna, or Thursday night really at Macna. And that's what you get. And so we said, yeah, let's do that. So we said, we're going to just be us. We're going to use whatever foul or not foul language we want to use. We're going to talk about whatever it is we want to talk about, and we'll see how it goes. And we did a few of them, and it was really fun, and got some good feedback. And then somebody named Snowman said, hey, I'll help you make this podcast a thing. I'll do all the work you don't want to do. Nice. So it went from, we're just recording a Zoom call with me and Ben. Now it gets edited and it gets graphics and some things like that. And there's a website and there's all kinds of stuff, which is fantastic, because now Ben and I get to just do content, and we're learning a lot about how to do it. Actually, we had a really good learning experience the other day, but there's a bunch of episodes and there's memberships, and we try to tackle things that interest us. So we talk about, discrimination of LGBTQ people. We talk about how women are treated in the hobby. We talk about mechanical filtration. We talk about lanthanum chloride. We talk about, whatever is facing us that we think should be talked about, we talk about. And we enjoy it and feel very privileged to be able to have a show like that.
And I think in one of the episodes, you guys promised to wear like spandex if you got to a certain number. So, I mean, it's fun, you guys. It's fun.
At 2,000 subs, Ben will do the whole show in spandex. And I think at 1,000, I'll do this the show from the crawl space where all my filtration is.
I love it. Well, I just want to say, you guys, I've watched podcasts before or listened to whatever. They're on YouTube too, guys, not just podcasts. But they just go back and forth perfectly. Like it just always. There's no. I asked Rich before the show. I was like, how do you do that? Because I've been doing this for not as many years as you by far, but I still stumble and can't think of something to say at a point. It's just like flow, like the waves of an aquarium. But
it's just I've got a lot of years in public speaking, so there's that. But it's really at the show is. This is what it's like to hang out with Rich and Ben.
I love it. I mean,
we're going to talk about aquarium stuff. So that's the whole concept in a nutshell.
Well, I think it's great. I'm warning you ahead of time. I'm going to bug you on the side for Mr. Snowman because I need to find my own snowman. All right. And that sounds really great. But no, he's doing a great job because they look great. And we'll make sure to put all these links in the description when we're done, guys. So check them out for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely. Cheryl and Holly, quick before we go into the cephalopods and the coral, have you guys watched Reef Beef or heard it?
I have not.
Oh,
I have not, but I'm going to now.
you're both fired. Just kidding.
I'm gonna say sometimes we're filthy, dirty, and nasty and stupid.
Now I'm more interested.
What we're trying not to do is we're trying not to put out. I think there's enough podcasts
Yes.
in the reef world that are trying to be for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think they sometimes become very vanilla when that happens, and they kind of are the same. And we don't want to be that way. So we're not really trying to we're not so concerned with everybody listening to it. We figure the right people will listen to it, and hopefully there'll be enough right people that will keep it going. So I want to make I got a comment from somebody who I respect who said, yeah, it's pretty good. It's a lot of bad language. I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's how it's going to go. That's not changing.
That was the first question that I when we started this tonight, I said, do you have any questions for me? And he said, language. Do you have a policy? And I was like, policy? But no, I got you. I'll tell you.
That's been my question as a guest or a speaker forever.
Right.
No, because I want people to, if you want a vanilla version of me, read the papers or read the articles.
Mm-hmm.
If you want me, I'd rather give you me.
Mm-hmm.
And me, I say words people don't like sometimes.
Well,
but I'm also respectful. So I think I said one or two so far. I apologize.
I didn't hear a one. I wanted to say, I told him, and I'm telling you guys, of course, we want him here, and we want the real him. So anything comes out, we're going to be cool with it. Darn it. Okay. Go ahead, Cheryl. And then I'm jumping into next.
It's like all seahorses are horny little critters.
Okay. That's your version of cursing, Cheryl. You might not want to go to Reef Beef.
No, that's just trying to keep it clean.
I know. I'm kidding. I was just kidding. Okay, so while I try to inconspicuously, we also drink wine all night, right? Inconspicuously look at my notes. Let's go cephalopods. What kind of projects have you done? Which was your favorite? Kind of give me an overview. I know where I'm keeping you long.
I've done all kind of stuff with cephalopods. I love them. They made me so happy for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I've collected them in the wild, which was incredibly fun because I actually know what I'm doing. That's kind of nice to find out that you actually know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Instead of hoping you know what you're doing. I know how to collect them. I know how to find them. I know how to ship them. Very happy with that. I got to work with two. The first one I ever worked with was Wonderpuss, which I have a tattoo of right here. And that was, no, that's not the first one. That's the first octopus I worked with.
Okay.
and I was able to keep that one alive for 9 months. And that's when at a time when they were lasting a month, 2 months for most people. And I was like, oh, I think I have an in here. I think I can do this. And then I kept other octopuses, some more ones that are regularly available in the trade. And then there was a couple of these octopuses that were mentioned in a couple of scientific notes that Roy Caldwell over on tonmo.com, the Octopus News Magazine online. That's where you go for all your cephalopod information. I'm
going to put links everywhere when we're done, guys. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's really the good link
okay.
If you want cephalopod stuff.
Okay.
And so I become friends with Roy Caldwell, who's a professor at Berkeley. He and I actually were almost fighting for a little while, and then we talked, and it was like, oh no, we respect each other for reasons about sustainability. He was saying, stop posting pictures of these cephalopods we don't know anything about. And I said, oh, look at the disclaimers I'm putting on every article that I write about these. I think we should know, and people should be informed to not buy them. We shouldn't just hide it. And so that worked out great. I was able to work with Roy and Chrissy Hufford, work with the larger Pacific striped octopus and the lesser Pacific striped octopus, which are animals out of myth. Never thought I would get to work with either of them. The lesser is a tiny little animal about the size of an American quarter. And when they're iteroporous, which means they have lots and lots, they keep laying eggs. They don't die. It's not that octopus story that you hear on Mother's Day where, the female octopus tends her eggs and then they hatch and she dies. This is not what happens with these guys. And their babies are huge. They're almost straight benthic babies, right? There's a couple of cold water animals that do that. These are kind of mid temperature animals. Great animal. Central America, we were able to get some, breed the crap out of them. Amazing. Unbelievable that we got to work with those. And then the larger is even a crazier animal. And we got a lot of press for this one when we were able to get them and keep them and publish a paper about them. They mate kind of beak to beak, which is unknown in the cephalopod world because often octopuses will strangle each other when they're mating.
Right.
There's always the danger of being eaten by your mate. They cohabitate. They live in groups. Although that's never been visualized in the wild, but we've done it in aquariums. Started when I was 15 with an octopus in my bedroom of craziness, which was a lot like this lab. To jumping up to these crazy animals that we never thought we were able to work with, being able to get a connection in Nicaragua. To be able to get them, which is now impossible to get to or to get animals out of. So we're probably not going to see them again for a long time. It's just been amazing to be able to work with them. The guy who described the larger Pacific striped octopus, here's a photorealistic image.
Oh, love it.
This is Jason Langer painted this for me.
Oh, wow.
Which is incredible. He's the guy who does the cookies. I don't know if you've seen those. But these are them mating, and this is just and actually you can see there's insertion going on. This is like porn right here. But this is them mating, basically beak to beak. You can see the stripes and the spots. This animal's just awesome. Incredible, right?
Really.
And the guy who described these, or who they're actually not even described by science yet. They don't have a scientific name at this point. But the guy who described their behavior in 1982 in a short note in a proceedings from a convention, tried to publish on them, got reamed in peer review, and then ran away from science, which was horrible. Arcadio Rodnice. But when we were going to publish, he was still alive. So we contacted him and said, hey, we want to try to get this thing named after you. And he said, I'd rather be an author on the paper. So we made him an author on the paper. And we published it, and he died 6 months after we published.
Oh my gosh!
But he got to see everything he said back then be proven out in the literature.
Okay, if that isn't the one thing everybody wants in life, I don't know what is. But go ahead.
A great story.
Awesome.
I'm so thrilled that it worked out like that. Because when he was saying these things they're iteroporous and they live in groups. it was so 180 degrees from how everyone thought octopuses were at the time that they did not believe him. So I do a talk on that called the Bigfoot of Octopuses. And it's kind of my favorite story. I'm so thrilled to have been involved in that. And we're still trying to do ongoing research on them. Whoa, you fell over.
Uh-oh.
There.
Oh,
There.
we're
Now
falling
I'm at a
over.
different angle.
Okay.
There. You don't get to edit this now.
Oh.
Now we're seeing Wine Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah. That's,
Go ahead, Rich.
so in a couple of different places, like I had a grant to go down and take and they're like 80 meters. They're 90 feet. Sorry, not meters. So they're deep as well. So we wanted to visualize them because that hasn't been done yet. But at the time in Nicaragua, traveling there wasn't safe. So we just were like, we can't go. And then COVID last year, there was some project I'm tangentially involved in. So hopefully in the next few years, we'll get some more information about them. They're charismatic and they're interesting and they're beautiful. And so I think there will be some push behind them to find out more about them.
Absolutely. So, and you mentioned, what did you say your favorite talk was? What was the name?
The Bigfoot of Octopuses.
Okay, I just want to make sure when I go back and watch this, I can and do all the tags that I can make sure to tag that and find the link. I also watched something recently where you really went into depth talking about not just octopus, but cuttlefish, all of them. And I think it was like the Breakfast Club. Do you remember doing something like that?
Oh, I think I did something for the Academy at the beginning of COVID.
Okay.
I think they called it their Breakfast Club,
Okay.
where it was just talking about octopuses and cephalopods.
Well, I knew the story of these that did not strangle each other during mating from that.
Yeah.
So we might try to link that one too. But
Right.
so why do you think it is that these guys are so different than all the others?
Well, don't know.
Okay.
Which is the best answer you can give in science, I think. Don't
Sure.
know. They develop differently, and perhaps we're wrong about a lot of cephalopods. I was going to say earlier about seahorses. One of the problems with keeping seahorses is people say, let's keep seahorses, and they think all seahorses are the same, and they're really, really not.
True.
Right? I don't have to tell you guys.
No.
That. It's the same with octopuses. You say octopuses, people kind of think they're all the same, and they're a very group with different lifestyles and different needs, and they're just
Different habitats.
yeah. Each animal has got to be looked at as its own thing with its own unique needs. Not each one, but you got to figure out, are they groupable or are they not groupable? So,
Well,
I don't know.
Even within same species, you can get different kinds of mating behaviors
Sure.
and all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
And so it's not etched into stone just because they're the same species.
But
Even more true, yeah.
so is this? How do you feel about octopus being kept in aquariums by hobbyists?
I think you have to be more of a nut than a seahorse person to keep an octopus, because most of the time you're going to get the tropical animal. Tropical animal's only going to live about a year. You gotta feed it different foods most of the time. But again, it's the same thing. If you're dedicated and you have the time and you have the means and you have the dedication, I'm okay with it. I saw it at the store, and that makes me uncomfortable.
Sure.
I wrote an article for Practical Fish Keeping last year. That's basically why you shouldn't keep an octopus.
Well, we'll link that too. But
Besides the fact that they claw through the plumbing system and then back up.
Yeah, they can escape. So you get the funny story about well, I kept it and it hasn't escaped, and it's like, yet.
Right. Oh no,
Yet.
that's Dan's favorite thing. People will put a seahorse tank up that's got like not just clowns, because that might be doable depending on the clowns, but I mean, all these corals and anemones and everything, and like, oh, see, it's working, and he's like, so you've had it up for what, 5 minutes?
Right,
If it's not a year, don't talk to me. But
The guy that had carpet salmon with a seahorse.
Right.
I mean, that's
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
we get that question, can you keep octopuses with fish? And I eventually coined the phrase, what it was. Yeah, it works till it doesn't.
Right. Oh, I love it. I love
You
it.
know,
But
you know. And you always get somebody who says, well, I've been keeping them for 2 months. And
Oh.
it's like, and then you never hear from them again. It's like,
Yeah.
we know what happened.
Yep. And so, but they are not a species that you would say is one of those delicate that might have trouble with shipping. It's just caring for them once you get them.
Yeah, they can have trouble shipping too.
Oh, okay.
They're not the easiest animals to keep. We get a lot of people who want to keep them right off the bat, and we all kind of say, you should keep a reef tank for 6 months to a year first, get all that figured out, and then you can try the harder animals. Yeah, it's not a beginner animal. It's not the easiest animal, and it's not going to live very long. So you're going to be very unhappy very soon unless you are in love with them. I'm going to say that from now. I'm going to try to say that instead of a nut.
And when you do, be like, "For the whisper." No, I'm just kidding. Okay, and I love it. Okay, so I'm trying to do one question before we jump to coral. And if anybody has questions, guys, listen. I'll be completely honest with you. As much as Rich is not just a cephalopod dude, but he has done so much work with the species within it. I don't know anything about them, I'll be honest. So I find it fascinating, and I've watched some of his talks and some of the videos. But if you have questions that I haven't asked him, get them in there quick before we end this. And anyone else who has a question, let us know. But Caddy wanted to know, is there such a thing as a warm-blooded fish? I know temperatures vary based on where they live, but what's the difference between a warmer species and a colder sub-temperament one?
Well, I think there's 2 questions in there.
Yes.
And I got some tinkling in the back of my mind about a warm-blooded fish, but I don't know if I'm making that up or not.
Right.
Most fish are cold-blooded, which means their body temperature is the temperature of the surrounding environment. That's all that means. Mammals are warm-blooded because even when it's cold outside, we warm ourselves up internally. Most fishes, God, maybe it's tuna. I'm totally talking out of my butt.
Don't quote. Go ahead.
Don't quote my butt.
Right.
So, so some animals are evolved to live in colder water, and some animals are evolved to live in warmer water. It's just an evolution thing.
Gotcha. Good enough answer for me. I would have tinkled away and not answered. Okay. So I wanted to ask a couple more, just because I don't think I dove deep enough, because I don't know much about cephalopods, and I know you're not the dude. But which species have you kept? You already answered that, didn't you? The wine.
I kept a lot.
The wine. Okay, a lot works. Okay. And are there any, not just octopus? Don't laugh at me, Thomas. Not just octopus, but are there any that you would say could be easily or belong in the hobby?
I think anything belongs in the hobby if it's sustainably and responsibly collected and sourced.
That was a responsible answer. Go ahead, sir.
Any what that means is we need to know their wild populations and know how many animals we can extract without negatively impacting those populations. So, it's fine, but I don't know if we know that about octopuses. So, since they're not very easy to breed captively, and they haven't, and the ones that have been studied are usually the ones that we're not going to want to keep. The bigger ones, like Octopus cyanea, the Hawaiian day octopus or the day octopus, that's the octopus's octopus. That's a big octopus that's going to try to escape all the time and squirt you, and you have to be really in love to keep that animal, because it's kind of like having a dog. Kind of. It needs attention. When there's smaller ones, but smaller different species. If you can show that they're responsibly collected, there's a company called KP Aquatics that responsibly collects out of Florida. They don't collect a whole lot of octopuses during the year. So I think that's a good source. And they're not out looking for them. If they come across them and they can collect it, they will. But they're not, going after them. So their populations are not going to be decimated in the way they can be when a collector decides that that's the animal that's going to make me money. So KP Aquatics is probably the only one I would say you should get it from. But really, go to tonemo.com and read up on everything and see if this is an animal you actually want.
Yeah.
It's not domesticated. You can't just shut it in your apartment and go away for the weekend.
You might find it someplace else.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to close them in, and you got to be respectful and responsible for them.
That's what we always say about seahorse tanks too. Is it's not exactly difficult. You just have to know what they need and provide it. And if you're not willing to, don't do it. Period. You know, don't half it.
Right.
For sure. And let's see. Okay, ladies, did you have any other questions? I'm sorry, I don't mean to make the cephalopod portion so small, but I just don't know much about them. Any questions about them?
I actually
Go
do,
ahead.
Rick, because I know you're in the Bay Area, right?
Yeah.
See, I live in Northern California up near Chico, and there's not a lot of marine hobbyists up here that I know of. So I was wondering if there's any groups you can recommend, for Northern California to look into, people that are into the marine hobby.
Up near you, I know there's a Sacramento area group. Other than that, I think there was a Chico Reef Keepers group for a while.
I think there was too, but everything I find on it is like old. I don't think they're
When I was more active in the clubs, I was active in Bay Area Reef Keepers. There was a lot of work trying to get the wider community together, and I think that's kind of fallen to the wayside a little bit in the last 5 or 10 years. So I'm not really sure what's going on. I know there's a juggling group in Chico.
One of my exes was a juggler, so.
I bet you I know your ex.
You know Dave Lindstrom?
I think I know that name. Yeah.
Oh no!
Yeah.
How cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was literally just gonna say that's probably the coolest thing I learned from you in this talk. That's so cool. But go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I worked with a guy in Chico called Todd Paul Ding. I think he's still there. We did a weekly show at some club for a while. That was actually pretty fun. When I went to school at Davis, so it was easy to get to Chico at the time.
Chico's a fun town.
Yeah. Except everything's on Flume Street, and there's like 50 Flume Streets.
Right. Good question, Holly, but we'll try to try to find some. I'm sorry. We'll try to find some.
It must have been out on a bar night, right?
Probably. Well, it's Chico, so yes.
That's Chico.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So
he needs a VW too, just like you, Holly.
Okay, ladies. All right, real quick, I do have to ask, because the coral spawning thing is so cool. So you talked at the very beginning of this Wine Wednesday about the happiness level and how you have to jump to something new every 7 years. I think you said something like that. Anyways, 7 to 10. And so what made you do the jump to coral? Or did you always do coral?
No, I've always done coral.
Okay.
I've always loved coral. Coral's always been fascinating to me. One of the things I worked on the academy was the mega reef tank there.
Oh, that's right.
So that was a lot of fun. Yeah. And then when I, after being there for 7 to 10 years, we got a researcher came in who wanted to spawn coral. And I'd been keeping up with what Jamie Craggs had been doing, because I've met him several times through the hobby and through work. And she came in, Rebecca Albright, and she wanted to set it up. And so it was like, you should work with Rich. So I worked with her. It was great. And kind of, we built a coral spawning lab there and got that all set up, and then went and collected coral for it in Palau and brought them back. And we were able to have success the first year. It was a pilot project. And then we were able to do that 2 more years in a row. And that was great. And I was kind of, that's what I was doing. And I became a part of her lab, and I'm still part of her lab, the Albright lab at the California Academy of Sciences. And I started going to grad school, but I think I don't care about grad school. I think I'd rather do the work.
Yeah.
and jump through hoops. um, so that's how that happened. So I got to take all the stuff that I had learned about keeping corals and focus it into a project that some people really cared about. So that was really fun and exciting for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was trying
Yeah.
to do two things at once, but no, that is cool. And so, I mean, like, without asking you to go into like deep details, how did you manage to figure it out and capture it at just the moment and figure out how to do this?
Well, Jamie Craggs has got a couple papers on this.
Okay.
So you wanna check that out.
Yep.
There's also, I think, the January edition of Coral Magazine this year has an article by Jamie, has an article by me, and by Carrie O'Neill, who is doing a lot of this work in Florida for the Florida Aquarium with coral spawning. And through those resources, you should get everything you need to know. It's just like everything else we've been talking about. It's not easy. You've got to be a nut. I'm sorry. You've got to love nuts. You got to be a nut love to do
We're mixing it. Right.
The corals, you know, they've got to develop their gametes over 8 months, and then you've got to have a light cycle and a moon cycle and heat cycles that will trigger them to develop the gametes and then trigger them to spawn at the same time. And that's only like the easy part, you know, and then you've got to collect the spawn and mix sperm and egg together from different colonies. And then you've got to grow those into embryos, and then you've got to grow those into little swimming larvae. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Baby
No,
corals
but
swim. Baby
Jeez.
corals swim.
I did
Baby
know that
corals
from a Magna
swim.
talk, I think by you, but go ahead. Sorry.
By me or Jamie, right?
Yes.
And so they swim and then they settle. And then you've got to keep them alive because everything wants to overgrow them or kill them or eat them. So it's just an amazing amount of work. So I was really involved in that 3 years in a row. Last year was the 4th year. And because of COVID, we couldn't really get into the academy. So I had the larvae here and was growing them here. I actually have a couple of babies over there still.
I remember in one of your videos, you literally say, "Oh, I didn't even know," you were showing the new spawned coral, and you were like, "Oh, I didn't even know that one was under there." Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So they're just
crazy.
that was like 4 years of sustained effort.
Mhm.
So I feel like I'm taking a little break right now. Some of these tanks were going to be for coral spawning, but I was able to get a bunch of corals at the beginning of last year. That all crapped out at the same time, which was a really strange thing, and haven't really been able to replace them. But now something else is going to be happening in there probably. So we'll see if I get back to that here. I know at the Albright Lab we're still doing it, but
Nice.
you know, I'm Jamie Craggs is really the one who's trailblazed all of this. Without him, we wouldn't have done it. He really figured it out and turned that into a PhD, and he knows what he's talking about with coral spawning.
For sure. And that was sorry.
The early jumper honors who was able to be involved in a project that was doing it.
Well, that was a really bad question anyways, because it's so huge. You can't do like, I mean, that's really hard to answer that question. Sorry. But so, yeah, and I just wanted to throw it in because like I said, I'm going to put all sorts of links when we're done and make sure you can catch Jamie talking at Magna and other things. But
Thank you.
Okay, so can you share with us what your next projects or what your focus is becoming now?
I'm now working with, I'm consulting for a reef restoration company.
Ooh.
That makes robots. So I'm helping them, and we're going to be doing some experiments in some of these tanks here. I would really like to, first of all, I'd like to relax. I've been doing aquarium stuff nuts wise, just completely 100 miles an hour for 14 or 15 years, which is too long for me to be doing that. And so I'm taking a little break on it. We'll see what happens. But I'm also really interested in doing things that have impact or might have an impact. So going to grad school and writing some papers about, making up some thesis to do. I don't know how interested I am in that, because I'd like to be doing something practical. So reef restoration seems pretty practical. Although, of course, the secret is, stop putting terrible things in the water.
Right.
But, so we'll see how it goes. I'd like, and I'm really excited about this company I'm working with, because they're getting stuff done. Instead of talking about
nice.
getting stuff done, they just went and did it and went, hey, we've done some stuff. It's like, oh my God, you've done that. So I'm very excited about them, and we'll see how that goes. And consulting is agreeing with me very well.
Nice.
Rather than waking up and going to a job,
Right.
I get to go, oh yeah, no, let's meet at 11. 11's a good time for me.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, that's so much better than a job for sure.
Yeah, and besides that, I'm trying to fall back in love with all of this stuff. Really.
Right.
So I've fallen back in the last month. I've fallen back in love with my display tank in the other room, which, sorry, I can't show it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually pretty exciting. And all of this is, my family supports me doing stuff. I'm passionate about that. They'd rather me be passionate and happy than in a grind trying to make some money. So I'm trying to get that all stabilized and be happy about what I'm doing and feel good about it again. So, which is the danger.
Yeah.
When I do something for too long, I burn out.
Sure.
So
I think everybody gets to that point at times when it's just like when you've had back-to-back nursery tubs full of seahorses.
Sure.
And you just raised hundreds and you've just placed them. You can't take a deep breath and go, no more. I need some time off.
And remember, and I worked for a public institution, which has got different priorities than I might have. So
this way, it's you.
Yeah, I was probably, and I was doing things. I don't want to get into it, but I think I am much better as an independent contractor than I am, or 5 to 7 years, and then I should move, because when we're just trying to keep it ticking over, I'm so less interested than trying to do interesting work or get something going. So
you need something new constantly. Here's my thought. I think you should be the one to create and figure out how we're gonna do the certification and sustainable stuff. Look, he's like, no.
You find someone who's got several tens of millions of dollars to
right.
get started, and I'll be involved in it.
I'm on it. But no, I'm just glad to hear that you're still, we need you in the, I don't know how you would say it, industry, trade, research, hobby, whatever. We need you here. All of this stuff you've talked about tonight is really important, and the things that you discover and share with us I'm just glad you're not so bored that you've left.
Thank you very much. That actually means more than you know.
Oh,
so thank you.
Man, I tell you. Okay, ladies, any fine? Oh, you know what? One last one, kind of generic, but what would you say the biggest hurdle you faced in aquaculture, or in this realm, not your whole life, but this realm? What would you say was your biggest hurdle to overcome? Or the thing you couldn't get done, or the thing, something like that. You got to give us some dirt.
I'm not. I think I understand the question. If not, reload it again. I'm sure it's me. The not being able to figure out a way to breed larval octopuses and raise them up is pretty frustrating.
Gotcha.
I think we should be able to figure that out. But I think that's bigger than what I can do here. There's a group at Woods Hole who's doing a lot of work on it. It just and Monterey Bay did a lot of work on it. It just looks like it turns out to be a lot of grind work.
Sure.
For not enough payback.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love that to be figured out. I mean, when I first started breeding cuttlefish, it was like the only reason I'm breeding these is because I want to keep them. So I want to breed them so somebody else will do this as a business, so I can just buy cuttlefish. I don't need to breed them myself.
Right.
Yeah.
So anybody who watches this later, right? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Did that answer the question?
It did. Honestly, I'm trying to jump. I'm trying to be inconspicuously looking at my notes here. I'm gonna quit faking it. Just let's see, because I just had a good one and I just lost it. I've
My
already
fault.
asked future goals. No, it's all good. Oh my gosh, that's killing me. Okay, Miss Cheryl or Holly, do you have any questions while I find this question? It's the wine, guys. I'm sorry.
Now she's putting it back on us. Holly.
Yeah, of course.
It's a lot like reef beef. We get confused and lost all the time. And with no wine, we're just idiots.
Oh, well, I get to use wine. I've
Oh,
already
we have a
asked all
dog?
those. There was one.
Come
Oh,
here.
we have a dog. Show us the dog while I
She
fake
won't-
this. Oh,
She
I found it.
always they come in here and they look at me when I'm doing a recording of something, and then I go, "Come here," and then they run away. They never let me-
They're
Oh,
camera
no.
shy.
Come here,
He's not-
Nessie, come here, come here, come up here, come here, come here. Come here.
Aw. And this dog's adorable. Oh, man.
This is the big
Oh.
one.
Oh, that's the big one. Yeah. Ooh.
The big one. The little one won't come up.
It
No.
looks like a greyhound cross.
Yeah, she's a Peruvian hairless.
Aw.
The little one is running away as I go to get her.
Oh.
This is Nessie. Hi, Nessie. You're
Aw.
a good girl. You are so good.
I get you get around to like we've seen a lot of stuff in Vietnam, Thailand, places like that, and we see people that are basically claiming to have captive bred fish and stuff, and in reality they're going out and harvesting and selling them.
Mm.
Yeah, that's tough.
We need the certification.
Yeah, it just sucks, and
Yeah.
there's not much you can do about it. And
Contact the local authorities. One that I found was actually
yeah,
worked for their fish and wildlife and was responsible for maintaining the fisheries
Mm.
around Vietnam.
oh, great.
I was like,
Do it to it. Okay, I did find my listen, I've kept
Got her.
all of you guys. Ooh, wait, let's see the dog. Let's see the dog first. Hang on.
That's
Oh.
Ramona Flowers.
That's
Aw.
I love the pictures you share. Oh.
She has no teeth.
Oh.
Hi, Ramona. Oh, they're hungry. That's what's happening.
Okay, well, but let's yes, I was just going to say I've kept him for so long. I really appreciate it. My final two questions
My
are
pleasure.
easy ones. First one is, can you please tell us, everyone wants to know, what's the deal with the picture with the octopus on your head? Was it just a funny
Oh.
moment or
No, that's actually. I'm glad you brought that up.
okay?
We were in Tonga, and we were working with the collectors there for how to collect responsibly. You know, don't collect the whole colony. Take this much of the colony.
Oh,
Don't collect too many from the same spot. Move them around. And as we were doing that one day, an octopus came through, and they like to eat the octopuses, right? So one of them grabs a hammer and starts like prying up the reef and hammering the octopus underwater.
Ooh.
It was for like 10 meters of just kind of destruction. And we came up, and I said, okay, that's really interesting, because we're talking about being nice to the reef. And so, you know, there are easier ways to get an octopus than to do that.
Mhm.
And they said, well, they'll bite you. And I said, no, they won't. And I grabbed the octopus and I put it on my head. I said, see, they won't bite you. And luckily it didn't bite me. And we took it off and tried to make the point that way. So yeah, that was an animal that had been caught for food and was going to be eaten. And I put it on my head to make a point about them. You know, you can collect these animals without destroying the reef.
Yeah.
Lovely point, and see what a difference you make. I just so freaking cool. All right, Cheryl, were you
What
gonna
was
say
it?
something? Go ahead.
Somebody thought you had dreadlocks on at first.
Yep.
I love that. Octo dreadlocks.
I thought that too.
Okay, so
I
my go ahead. So my final thing, Richard, is if anybody wants to support your work, or can you suggest work that they should support? Like can you share, even on the site afterwards, links that maybe you would suggest that, like, how can hobbyists help? Does that
Well,
make sense? I'm sorry.
You can support Reef Beef.
There you go.
You can
Reef
support
Beef.
Reef Beef. You could become a member at Reef Beef.
There you go.
ReefBeefPodcast.com/membership. other than that, I would support Masna. I think Masna is doing good work and is the closest thing we have to being a central body for the hobby. And I think COVID kind of kicked it back, but I think I could see a few years down the road, Masna expanding to be to play more of a leadership role
Ooh,
than
yeah.
an organizational role. So I think that's good. Other than that, it's so hard, support Biota.
Yeah.
You know about them?
Yes. Go
Biota
ahead, though.
Palau or Biota.
Mhm.
Tom Bowling's company. I think they're a company that's doing aquaculture right. I've visited them several times in Palau, and I've worked with Tom, and think he knows what he's doing and is going the right direction. So I think if you're buying captive raised stuff, that's the company to do it from. They are not cutting corners. So I think they're fantastic. I can't get enough of Biota. Yeah, that's what I know. Everything else, I don't know. I don't know how much I believe a lot of other stuff that's being said. Sadly, I'd like to champion more stuff, but I'm not sure what's out there that's championable. If you know a store that's doing it right, support them.
Mhm.
Don't support the bad stores if you can. Support your local clubs. I think they're important. So
Very good point. Very good point.
yeah,
And
that
and
kind of
speaking
stuff.
of which, I gotta ask one more. I said that was the last question, but I've got one more.
Oh, yeah.
Skeptical
Can you
reef
remember it?
keeping. Yes.
Can you remember that?
Gene.
Dan, support Dan Underwood.
No.
Support-
No. No. Yeah. I mean,
Dan and I are two peas out of the same pod. We've been
true.
friends for years.
Yeah.
No. No. Go ahead.
All of the captive breeders who are doing it small. If you can find them, support them.
Yep.
Chad Vosen, Alyssa, all these people. They're
But nobody's currently raising what I want.
Yeah.
Well,
So you'll have to do it yourself.
there you go.
I already did for a while.
Nice.
Do it again. Hey, Richard, before
Yeah.
we do go, I did want to
Sure.
just mention, because I think they're so excellent, and I should have done it way earlier, but the Skeptical Reefkeeping Series. We kind of said something for a minute, but like, what made you decide to, well, I've asked that question 30 times tonight. Sorry. But like,
Yeah.
tell me more about it.
It's a series of articles. I've actually got like 3 half written.
Oh, nice.
So it's not over.
Yay.
But I'd written a lot of articles about how-tos, and I felt like I was just regurgitating things, which I think has a place. Every 10 or 15 years, I think we need a new article about herbivores and why tangs are good and things like that. I just didn't want to do them anymore. And it's like reef beef. I wanted to talk about things that I thought were important. And from being active on the reef forums, I noticed that there's a lot of not good thinking that happens.
Yep.
I mean, it's a small microcosm of the whole world, but because it happens everywhere. But what started was a thread about using ginger to cure ick.
Oh, jeez.
Huh?
And it's just all fallacious reasoning that doesn't hold up, worse than anecdote. And so I broke it down about how there is no support that ginger does anything, but why it looks like there could be support because of the life cycle of ick, right? I mean, let's face it. We've seen people say if you change the light bulbs, the ick goes away, because we know that in 5 to 7 days, the white spots you see of the parasite fall off the fish.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So that means if I poured this special tincture into the water and the white spots went away, the tincture made it go away. And that's not how it works.
No.
So that was the first one, was talking about that. That's a fallacy called post hoc ergo propter hoc, which is a fabulous fallacy. Too bad it's a fallacy, though. It doesn't hold out. And then was able to figure out different things that still seemed interesting to talk about. I think there's 13 or 14 installments so far. They cover anecdote. They cover magic in a bottle. They cover.
Magic
We
in a
looked.
bottle.
We looked at ICP testing and what the claims that were being made about ICP testing at the time. Did they hold up? There was no real terminology for the different, what does captive bred mean at the time?
Oh yeah.
People were saying tank raised, and what that meant to shysters was that they was in a tank for a week and then they sold it to you. And that kind of made us upset. So Kevin and Erickson and I wrote an article where we proposed some definitions, and because nobody else has done that, they're kind of the de facto definitions.
I share them. Go ahead.
Thanks, Kevin. We have a better way to do it now, so we are actually working on revisiting that.
Good.
We're going to do a scale because I think that's what needs to be done. So yeah, it was just looking at aspects of the hobby through a skeptical eye, not a cynical eye. And why should we believe? I did one all about communication and how to be taken seriously and how to make points and why people should listen to you. If you write in all caps, no one's going to pay attention to you. Just all kinds of things like that.
Yeah.
And I like those articles a lot. I think they were instrumental in getting me that award in 2014. So I'm pretty proud of those. And those are all up on reefs.com. And I also keep them on my two sites, which we talked about earlier. Because
yes.
I think I want, and I reference them all the time. It's really interesting. Something comes up. I think the fight between the hobby and science is really interesting. I think what I'm seeing now a lot is people saying, when I ask for evidence, people go, well, I don't have a scientific paper. And it's like, I'm not asking for a scientific paper.
Right.
I'm asking for evidence,
Right.
which could be anything. It's, you don't have to be, there's such an anti-science movement in our country and in the world, that I think it's a knee-jerk thing. And I think we should take a step back and understand it. So I have a half-written article about that as well. There was a love letter to the aquarium trade and hobby, which was originally called "If I Were Dying, I Would Say."
I think I read that. No, I brought it up again. I wanted to make sure you did talk about it because I've shared many of the skeptical reef keeping articles. They're really good. They all have valid, serious points, and I can't wait to read the new ones. I didn't know it was continuing, so that makes me really excited. And now
ethics.
Yes.
When these are things that I think a responsible hobby would talk about, and people are afraid to talk about them.
Yep.
So,
well, and with the hobbyist sciencing kind of thing, I guess some of the fear might be like I was doing an experiment with 2 different bottled bacterias, and I'm like, if I actually tried to make this or broadcast this, someone's going to say, where's your base? Where's your, you're not doing it right kind of thing. There's so much criticism, but
yeah. And everyone wants to tear it down, but I think it's pretty easy. I think you just say what you did.
Yeah.
You just say what you did. The danger is that people make conclusions from that.
Oh yeah.
And
okay.
So
right.
It's like the same thing with the Pygmy Seahorse paper, right? Part of the problem we got in peer review is people wanted us to make conclusions because we only had an N of 1. We only had one set of Pygmy seahorses to breed. And it's a methods paper. This is what I did. This is what I think it could mean. And this is what I don't know.
It's a learning process.
Science grows upon itself.
And this is what next steps should be. This is what I think next steps should be. So I'm perfectly fine. I'm perfectly fine with somebody who does bacteria in a bottle and they test it in 2 buckets. And, but it's only going to get so far, which is fine. No, there's no control, as long as you don't say, and therefore this is the better bacteria. It's like, well, you didn't really show that, but you showed some interesting idea that
this is what happened for me.
Yeah. It's a little bit of information that we may not have without the experiment you did.
Sure.
So the next person who does an experiment that's similar can now inform themselves with what you did, so they're not starting from scratch the same way. So I think that's fine. What it shouldn't be met with is like when the nanobubbles craze was going on and
Right.
people were saying it raises your pH. And I said, well, what was the pH before and what was the pH after? And I got called an asshole. It was like, but you said it raises the pH. How much did it raise the pH?
Right.
Yeah.
To be fair, I actually nanobubble in my reef, but
No, there's plenty of reasons to do it.
Right.
If
If
you're
you
going to make the
question
claim,
it, you don't get hateful. Right.
if you're going to make the claim that it raises the pH, you've got to be prepared that the next question is how much does it raise the pH and do I care?
Right. Right.
And if you can't answer that, if you can't even say how much it raised the pH, it's like, well, then how do you know it raised the pH?
Right.
Are you just making that up? If you say it raised the pH, you had to know what the pH was before and you had to know what it was after. Or you could say, well, the theory suggests that it should raise the pH. It's like, well, fine. That's what the theory says.
Yeah.
But if you can't do a pH test before and after, you can't tell me that it raised the pH. You could say, I think it would raise the pH. I'm not going to say a damn thing.
Right.
Well,
I can't wait to read the actual Skeptical Reefkeeping article about that. So again, guys, links in the description. But I'm curious, not shifting gears totally. This is kind of a, for me question now because I had a little predicament. How do you feel about bottle bacteria?
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about bottle bacteria.
Okay.
I know sometimes when things are going goofy in my tanks, I'll put it in because it makes me feel like I did something. Does it do something? I can't tell you if it does something or not. There's a lot of people that say it works to cycle tanks. There's a lot of people that say it doesn't really work to cycle tanks.
Right.
So I don't really know what to tell you. What I can tell you is that microbiome testing is now become a thing. There's a company called Aquabiomics that does microbiome testing.
Oh, nice.
They're not necessarily telling you what to expect or what you should do based on their tests while they're still gathering baseline data. But I think that's going to be really interesting to know about in the future.
Oh my
gosh.
That's
the direction it's all going.
Yeah.
But, I think adding bacteria has got to do something, because it's adding diversity of bacteria species to your tank, to the environment, whether it lasts a long time, whether those species establish themselves over time and stay there. Those are whole other questions that I don't know how to answer.
Sure.
That I don't know if we can answer right now. So
sure. I was just going to say bacteria definitely does something because I added too much and it clouded the hell out of my tank. So
oh, for sure.
Good times. I haven't been able to share my brand new seahorses from Holly because while they're happy, they don't care. I mean, seahorses come from very cloudy environments, and murky and mucky and all that stuff. They're fine. They're cool. They're eating, but I'm not going to share those pictures. Don't sweat it, guys. They're coming. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Do some vodka dosing and overdose
God help me.
with the most phenomenal amount of biofilm you have ever seen.
No, thank you. I went through that with the probiotics. Another one that is proven but not proven, but kind of proven. Yeah. So I'll keep the vodka for me, and we'll stop the bottle bacteria for now. But go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I can't say I don't add it sometimes.
Right.
So.
No, and I've used it and it's worked. But you're always best to do things the proper way for sure. But yeah, it helps. So you add it just when things are kind of quirky.
Yeah, I think things are kind of quirky, and because that's how I do it, I can't tell you if it worked or not because, like everybody else, we're doing things that make us feel like we've done something, right? And nothing makes you feel like done something like pouring something into your tank. But
but the thing is too.
Cheryl, hang on. Go ahead, Rich.
What's with you? Do you have to turn off the skimmer? Are you still running carbon? Are you still running
right
Purigen or what else?
Sure.
And all that's going to impact the efficacy of the bacteria.
Yeah. Plus, you're doing all those other things that you're doing. If you got cyano, you're doing all kinds of other things to try to get rid of the cyano, and you've added the bacteria. So now we're kind of back to the danger of post hoc reasoning. Did the bacteria do it, or did the 3 months of other changes you've made in the system do it? Or did it just burn itself out? we don't know
Yeah.
the answers to those
Sure.
questions.
And
First
I'm
group
curious,
is
hang on, I'm curious too. Do you think social media is a negative in this? Because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten messages and also posts where someone's like, here's the problem. Like they'll message me and then they'll post it also. And they'll say, here's the problem. What do you think? And I'll, ask 100 more questions because you can't. That's one of the biggest problems I think is that people answer questions without getting the information. But then I try to give them a little help and then I look on the post and they're doing 50 other things. Do you think social media kind of messes us up or do you think it's a good thing?
I think we're in a goofy place with social media right now.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to know who to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people with opinions and people who state their opinions as fact, and that's where we get into trouble. So you could, and then you can also opinion shop, right? You can post any question and get an answer that you like.
Yes.
Even though there'll be answers you don't like, but you'll get the ones that you do like, and you'll do the ones that you like, which isn't necessarily the right thing.
Right.
Or so it's people want there to be recipes for these tanks that we're keeping, and there really aren't. You need a blue thumb, you need a saltwater thumb, and so social media, man, I don't really pay attention to any of the Facebook groups because it's just a fight. Everything's a fight, and I don't want to fight. I want to, I think what I tell people is, before you take advice from somebody, ask to see a picture of their tank.
Yes.
If you like their tank, listen to their advice a little bit more. If you don't like their tank, don't listen to their advice because they're not getting a result that you like.
And maybe ask them how long the tank's been running. Well, not 2 days. But I'm not, Cheryl, I'm going to let you talk, but I just wanted to say, I hope that you had a pleasant experience here, Rich, because we would like to chat even when we do disagree sometimes. It's to try to figure out what's best, but I mean, we all have opinions and, we try to make it a comfortable place for everybody to come every week. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I personally would like to see all the seahorse groups that are on Facebook right now. Everybody move back to seahorse.org, where we have moderation, where we have people that are known experts in the field providing advice. If somebody gives bad advice that we know is wrong, we can correct it without offending anybody. And that is a much better place. It's like the same thing we do in our local reef club. There are people that we know that are experts in particular areas. So when somebody's got a question, I don't answer something about acros. I refer them to rec law.
Right. It's the same reason I recommend tonmo.com. It's why are we, some of the Facebook octopus sites just make me go nuts. It's
I can imagine.
And it's stuff like, how do I keep one? It's like, I'm not gonna, I don't even know where to begin to start to talk to you about that.
It was funny.
Go to Tonmo. Well, I don't want to do a bunch of reading. Oh, well, then you can't keep one of them.
Right. Exactly. Oh my gosh. No, that's so funny. We have to cover, like, if anybody went, actually, most people watch Wine Wednesday after Wine Wednesday, so I'm not sure why I do it live. But anyways, if you go back and look, we've covered the same topics over and over again. And guys, we don't mind. Anybody who has a question is welcome to come here and ask their questions. Yeah. But I mean, it's like you got to keep covering it because it doesn't seem to stick, and the same people come back and say, "How do I start a seahorse tank?" Whoa, that's like a list.
And the information changes a little bit over time.
It does.
Right?
It does.
So it's
yes.
good to revisit the stuff.
No, it is.
I never used to use K1 Media. Now I do.
And I like social media. That's how I found you guys.
Right. I
think it's just a matter of weeding through the, I won't
crap?
say it.
The shit? Yeah. Okay. Got it. Right.
I'm a bad influence.
I know it.
You kind of look, if you start reading the posts and looking, you'll kind of figure out who are the real experts here, and then you start looking for their advice. And I mean, it's like, for me, like I was saying, where I live, I don't have anyone local really to go to.
Yeah.
No, but so it's connected with me, me to people who actually know
Right.
about these things and what they're doing that can help me. So I'm thankful for it. But
Yeah.
you just have to be careful. And, just because, somebody says something, like Rich was
Yeah.
saying, doesn't mean they're right if they insist they're right.
Right. Hey, you know what? The real answer is go to Reef Beef for everything reef, and go to One Wednesday for everything
Yeah.
seahorse. There you go. We're settled. No. Hey guys,
It's one of
listen.
those things where I can sit there, and a dear friend of mine wanted to set up his first seahorse tank.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I walked him through all of it, including dry rock. You don't want to get pests, yada, yada, yada. Ammonia cycling, the whole 9 yards. First thing he does is go into a local fish store. They sell him a bunch of rock with pests in it. He
Mhm.
sets the tank up. He gets the seahorses. Now he has a major flatworm and hydroid infestation
Oh.
tank.
Mm.
And the list goes on. And he lost all his seahorses, of course.
Oh.
And I felt so bad, but I'm not going to call him
Right.
names or anything, because
Right.
it was a learning process for him.
Right.
Right.
Hey,
And
I wanted to read this comment really quickly. Thomas said, "I think of it like the gut. You can take a probiotic, but if you don't have the prebiotic to feed the strain, that strain will die off. Yeah, I can't even read it all. Anyways, guys, listen. Rich, I will absolutely let you finish what you were about to say, but I've kept this man for 2 hours, and we want him to get back doing some reef beefing and some other cool stuff. So, what were you going to say? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I don't even remember.
I talked over you.
Clearly
Sorry.
unimportant.
see, get him around all these women, and
No. And I'm sure it was not unimportant. I'm sorry I cut you off, but I just don't want to keep you over 2 freaking hours. I'm so sorry. Hopefully you'll come back someday and we'll
Oh.
talk again about, the beef.
I'd be happy to. I had a great time. This was really fun.
All right. Well, if you want to hang for a second after we're done, I can say goodbye properly. But for everyone else, and look, the wine glass is almost empty. My lovely questions. Wonder why. Okay, you guys say bye, and I'm doing my cheers.
Cheers.
I
Cheers.
Cheers. See you next week.